Hi lads, this is episode 1 of my Caro Kann speedrun to 2000. I hope you enjoy this. I'm only going to be posting Caro Kann games on this speedrun, and I'm only going to be posting wins. In today's video, we played 3 games. The first one was against the Hector Gambit, with analysis afterwards where I talk about what maybe the Hector Gambit goes for. The second game, we tried to play a Caro Kann, but we really can't unless we play it against e4. So just remember that. Any other opening, maybe you're playing more like a Slav defense or something. So it's not really a Caro Kann unless e4 has come out on the board. And game 3 was against the Hillbilly attack. I hope you enjoy. Here we go with episode 1, game 1. Okay, the Caro Kann can only be played against e4, and so I'm very happy to see that my opponent has played e4. The first move of the Caro Kann is c6, and it's always followed up with d5, so you can literally pre-move d5. It doesn't matter what they play. You can literally play d5 every single move. And against this is the 2 knights variation, and there's a pawn attacking us here. We're going to capture that pawn on e4 and they can recapture back. Often that's what they do. Wow, this is called the Hector Gambit, and I literally have never seen this before. But we're going to respond to this by trying to just play good developing moves. But this is very strange. I'm going to put the knight on f6, and they're probably going to capture here. But this is very unique. I haven't seen this before. Now, the question is, do I want to capture this piece? They recapture, and they have a knight in the center. Not a big fan of that. I would rather capture this way and develop my bishop out. So I think what I'll do here is just get my bishop developed and put it on a good square. Now, there's no tricks of like a knight coming here and smothering my king. Sometimes that happens when the queen's here. And in this position, we can simply just trade off some pieces. This is quite strange. Always when you start a game of chess, you want to develop all 4 of your pieces. I really don't know this opening. I'm sort of just going off the fly. I am very surprised. I've never heard of the Hector Gambit. I'll need to look that up and see. Maybe we can have a look at it after the game in the game analysis and see what tricks there are or what plans white might have with that kind of gambit. Now, always you want to get all 4 of your minor pieces developed and then castle your king. And right now, I don't have any pieces really on the board. I think moving the knight to d7 looks good because the square f6 comes with tempo. We can hit the queen and the queen's going to have to move away, and then we can, develop another piece, while white has had to waste moving their queen a couple times. Also, a knight on f6 is it's the best square to play your knight to. It's like such a defensive square. Often like the bishop and queen will come looking down this way, and just a knight on f6 will hold that square on h7, and it's a very good square just to put your piece on. Okay, so here the bishop's not really doing anything. I'm going to put my knight on f6. The bishop doesn't pose any threat unless I move this pawn, and then maybe it could come in here and sack or something. But yeah, we're totally fine here. Okay, and now I can develop again with tempo. You should always be asking, what is your opponent's intent? What does it do? And I think here they're looking at this, but it doesn't really do anything, so I don't quite understand their move. So bishop to d6 looks like the best response here because I get my bishop off of its starting square, and I force the queen to move again, which means they have to move the queen, and they haven't developed their dark squared bishop, which means I'm going to castle first, they're going to castle second, and everything's going to be good. So we can castle here. And again, I could develop with tempo here, hitting the queen, but I don't think I need to. I could also push a pawn here and force the bishop back, but then it could go to this diagonal, which I think is more favorable for it. Right now, it's kind of on a bad diagonal. So maybe here I'll just try to pose a threat and put my queen on c7 and look to take that pawn off on h2. They'll probably find a way to defend this h2 square, because they should be asking the questions, what is my opponent intending? And I'm intending to take that pawn. Okay, and so he's just moved his queen again, so we're going to actually take this pawn. And the nice thing is we're taking it with check. And if you don't take with check, like let's say the king was already here, then often they could have time to push the pawn forwards and trap your bishop. So do be careful about that. But if you can take it with check, then you can take it, and then you can, get your queen out to somewhere, or your bishop out wherever it's favorable to put it. I think we'll just pull back to d6. We've won a pawn, and now maybe we're going to think about getting our knight in, and we can lift the queen and maybe look for a checkmate angle. I'll put the queen here on e7. And here I can go for this interesting move, maybe knight g4 hitting the queen, or knight d5 hitting the queen. And that allows my queen to move on the next turn and maybe threaten checkmate. So probably best to try it this way, because this might allow white to take the knight. You know, if he captures it here, then we nearly have a checkmate. He can block with the queen. Then I would take, and then just win the bishop back. But we'll see. Okay, so he's just moved his queen. So let's go in for a check. And if he moves his king, this is checkmate. So he really should block. Okay, that's GG. All right, let's just jump into the review and see how that was. That was not a very good game of chess, but let's have a look. Just to jump into the review here, we played with a 92% accuracy, our opponent with a 72.7, and we made 1 inaccuracy in the game. And just to go through this real quick, the Hector Gambit, I just looked it up actually, is kind of like an intercontinental ballistic missile gambit, whatever that one is. If you know that one, maybe you've seen that or heard of it. But yeah, generally we go knight f6 and then pawn here, they take, and then, you know, let's say you kick their knight. They have this tactic where they attack your queen, and if you capture here, they give up their bishop, you take their bishop, and they win the queen. And so maybe this is something that you'd have to be aware of against this lower elo, but this game we didn't have to worry about it because we didn't kick the knight, knowing, I mean, I did know that that was something that they could go for, but we didn't even really look at that. So if you develop your pieces well, don't make unnecessary pawn moves, generally you won't fall to these kinds of tricks. Let's jump into round 2. Okay, our opponent is from India, and they are 333 rated opponent. And I'm hoping that they play the move e4 so that we can get a Caro Kann, but we'll have to wait and see. They should be playing this move, and they haven't. So we're not getting a Caro Kann, and you really can't play a Caro Kann unless they play the move e4, which is fine. I mean, maybe eventually it'll transpose. They have to move a pawn at some point, but okay, it's almost turning into some sort of Caro Kann. But yeah, this is the problem with, okay, so this is kind of like a Caro Kann. Let's just say it's sort of a Caro Kann where they played e4 and I captured and they recaptured here. This is kind of like the fantasy variation. I'm going to put a pawn in the center, because generally what you want to try to do in an opening is develop all 4 of your minor pieces and 2 pawns. So we have 1 pawn here, so our bishop can get out, and another pawn here, so this bishop can get out. And often in the Caro Kann, you put your bishop on g4. So I'm just going to put it here. He can't take this pawn because he's pinned. If the knight moves, we win the queen. And if he kicks me, I'm just going to capture. He'll capture. And maybe even, you know, I could take something. All right, so this is typically what happens at the sub 400 rating range. People just blunder their pieces. How do we want to develop? Probably just try to get both my knights out, get my bishop out. They've hung another piece, so we'll just capture that. And they're currently hanging the bishop as well, so I'm going to take that on the next turn if they do hang it. And this is defended. My knight's not defended, so you do need to be aware of pieces that are loose. Okay, their bishop was loose. They didn't defend it, so we're going to take that off as well. And I'm sorry that this is not really showcasing what a Caro Kann is exactly. We're going to always look for checks, so we'll take this pawn with check. We don't have a move here because the bishop is holding this square, which is frustrating, but we can take this pawn. It's only defended once and it was attacked twice, so we are able to win that for free. And he's attacking my rook, he's attacking my queen, and maybe he thinks that I'm going to move my queen away, but I can just take the bishop off for free. I'm wondering, do I have a checkmate though? Check here, king has to go here. I don't see the checkmate yet, so let's just capture the bishop, and maybe a check here will be a good move. And then we can check here with a bit of a windmill tactic. Okay, that's just checkmate in 1. All right, let's jump into the review for this one, and then we'll go on to game 3. Okay, we played with a 74% accuracy. I'm actually shocked. I guess this is a blunder run, but what have I done wrong here? So, did I hang some pieces? Oh, I guess I I guess I didn't. I had a free knight. Yeah, so should always be checking to see what pieces of your opponents are free. And he did just give me a free knight, which I didn't take. And because I didn't take it, yeah, I didn't blunder anything, but I could have won much quicker. So always, I think in this rating range, you just need to be aware of every time your opponent makes a move, check to see if you're attacking or defending that piece. So here, when I take here and they take here, just have a quick scan. Need to just be more mindful of that. And maybe that was less obvious because I took the pawn and I was more focused on this pawn here. And I forgot that my queen revealed an attack. You know, the pawn taking revealed my queen as an attacker. But good to just be aware of these things. All right, let's jump into game 3. All right, game 3, Goofy Jen from India. They're 373. And this time it looks like we're getting a Caro Kann. And again, you're always able to play d5 on move 2, no matter what they do. This is called the Hillbilly attack, where they attack quite early with the bishop. But I just think that the bishop's very poorly placed, because in the Caro Kann, we're going to get our bishop outside here, pawn up to here, and this wall of pawns is going to stop that bishop looking at anything important there. So we'll just get our pieces out. We'll put the bishop on g4. We just want to get it outside this pawn chain, and it's often very well placed on g4. And if they want to kick us, we can just pull back. That's fine. If they kick again, we can pull back to g6. We're just going to be playing e6 on the next move. And already our opponent has blundered. So in this position, they counted how many attackers they had. And they have 2 attackers on this pawn. But they didn't count how many defenders we had. We have 2 defenders. So when you're attacking, you always need to have an extra attacker. So this is a blunder because I can just simply capture that knight for free. And if they recapture, we'll take with the queen. Since I've got 3 pieces developed, I want to look at all my minor pieces. And the 4th piece I still need to develop is this bishop. So we're going to play the pawn up to e6. And now our bishop is able to get to one of these squares. Probably not b4, because the pawn moving up will hit it and it'll have to retreat or go back somewhere else. I think generally the best square for the bishop is d6. e7 might be more simple though. If you have a knight on f6, often a bishop comes here and pins it to your queen. Having the bishop on e7 will mean you'll never get pinned. Here he's attacking my bishop, and I could move the bishop or I could take this and double his pawns. I think I'm going to take and double his pawns because that's an easy target for my queen. My queen can just move up to d6 and attack the g3 square. We'll see what he opts to go for. Okay, just attacking my bishop, so we'll just pull that bishop back. And we've got a simple checkmate in 3. 1, 2, and queen takes g2. Obviously, he can stop it. But if you can see ways, especially at these lower elos, of how to set up a checkmate, I'd say it's not a bad choice to go for. Now, obviously, he can take here, and we'll have an isolated pawn. That's fine. We have to recapture here because it's check. But if it wasn't check, I might just threaten checkmate because that looks a lot more fun. So checkmate is now threatened. How does he defend this? He needs to move his rook up or his queen up to a square. Although this square is very ugly for his queen because my knight's holding it. So we'll see. Oh, he can also take the knight. Okay, I think makes a lot of sense to just develop some pieces. Probably just castling is a good move. So we'll just do that. Get our king safe. And then maybe he's going to capture here. Okay, he takes my pawn. That's fine. We're just going to capture this one. So it's just a trade of 1 pawn for 1 pawn. And now we have a check. If king goes here, we could check here. And that will be mate. So we'll see if he falls for that. He could also come forwards, which works for him. We could take this pawn, defend the knight, and hit the bishop. We'll just do this. It just seems simple enough. And I don't know how informative these Caro Kann videos are going to be in the initial stages, as you do just get some crazy openings. But generally, I think in this lower rating range is just trade-off pieces. You know, if they have a hanging piece, take the hanging piece. If they don't have a hanging piece, just develop your pieces until they do have a hanging piece. And they most definitely will. Okay, we'll just put our knight on a good square here. D5 is a good square because it's protected by a pawn. No other pawn can hit this knight, which means the knight is outposted. If he moves here, trying to attack this twice, we can just move the rook, which is also hit, to D8 and defend it. Okay, this move doesn't pose any threats because H7 is guarded by my bishop. So I'm just going to move this rook to D8. And we'll move this rook over to C8, attacking his bishop. And if there's a trade here, we're more than happy to trade off. Let's look for checks. I found one here. And the king has to go to one of these squares. He can't come forwards because he's got 2 pawns here and the knight's guarding this square. And now we can just simply take a pawn, threaten his bishop, and keep his king trapped on these squares. We'll trade here. Now I think probably a good idea to just deliver a few checks. We do have to be careful about back rank. So if we ever stop giving checks, we could lose the game. So right now, I think that's what we'll do. We'll just create a little hole for our king to escape to on H7. Probably try to keep it simple. We could threaten a checkmate, maybe up here on A1. So this actually was a really bad move. He did have his rook's defense, and now it looks like this is a checkmate, but he could take this rook, but actually this rook is checkmate because it's defended by the bishop along this diagonal. All right, let's jump into the review and see how that was. Okay, this game we played with an 80% accuracy. We had a couple inaccuracies, one mistake, one miss, but overall it was the hillbilly attack. You get the pieces out to these squares often if you can, close off the pawn chain, and everything's going to look good. This was a little weird though because he just blundered his knight, and so it wasn't a typical hillbilly. So we didn't get the typical ideas. And yeah, maybe it was inaccurate of me to try to go for a quick checkmate. And I suppose I'm doing that because I know that they're quite low rated, and I probably shouldn't play that way. I should probably play, you know, the best chess possible, even, you know, if they have a low rating. I'll try to do that in the next episode. But hopefully you found these 3 games a little helpful, maybe how I think about the game or threats they have. I mean, this back rank threat, you know, is one that we did need to just observe. Maybe counting the number of defenders and attackers is important as well. Actually here I had a mate in 2 I missed, so check here, king to this square, and then this is checkmate because the bishop's holding this square and the rook covers these 2. That's actually quite a nice checkmate. I didn't see that. But yeah, if you can, do like the video, leave a comment, and also my opponents will not lose their rating for these games. Their rating will be refunded to them because this is an authorized chess.com speedrun account. See you on the next episode.